Lisa Vick, career coach and corporate trainer, and founder of EatYourCareer.com, helping you create a nourishing professional life. Welcome to this month's free video Q&A session, Ask the Career Coach, where I will be answering your questions related to your career challenges and other workplace issues that come up. Today, I have about 5 questions that have been submitted already. Thank you to everyone who submitted your questions early. And then, of course, I want to take time to answer questions from people who are here on the live session. So you can type your question into the chat menu at any time. I will just pause for one quick moment and make sure that you can hear me and see me. So if you can both hear and see me, I would appreciate it if you would just type the word yes into the chat menu. It looks like a lot of people are commenting and saying hello, so that's fantastic. Good, I'm seeing some yeses, so I appreciate that. Thank you, everyone. I hope everyone is safe. I think I just feel like I kind of want to mention that. I mean, we have so much going on here in the US with extreme weather, and people in the Southeast have really been hit hard in the past few days. So I just want to acknowledge everyone who's here with us, and I'm glad that you're safe, and I hope that your family and loved ones are safe as well. Okay, great. So I'm seeing lots of people saying hello. So that's a good sign. It means you can hear me and see me. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and jump into answering questions, and then I will answer your questions in chat. So go ahead and type those in at any point in time during the session. Okay, so our first question here says, this person says, I'm in a new position at my company, and I've been asked to find a mentor to help me with my career and my position. When you're in a brand new group and you don't quite know the tasks that you will be doing, what factors should you consider when trying to pick a mentor? So this is a great question. And I think it's a good sign when an organization is asking you to find a mentor. It means they really encourage mentorship. I've been reading a lot of research lately about how effective that is for really getting people, especially when you're new. Having a mentor really helps you to acclimate to the new environment, to the new culture, helps you get to know people around you. So research shows that mentorship is just an excellent thing for professionals. It's great to be a mentee, and it's great to also be a mentor. So good sign here. I understand, though, that it's really difficult when you're brand new to an organization and you're being asked to find someone to be your mentor. You don't have a whole lot to go on. So unfortunately, I would say if an organization wanted somebody who was new to find a mentor, I would encourage the organization to be involved in that process in helping to connect people. Since your organization isn't doing that, I'll give you some of my strategies and what I would probably do in your situation. The first thing I would recognize is that at this point, you are brand new. You're not quite sure exactly what tasks you'll be handling. So you can't select a mentor based on, oh, this person knows how to do my job really well. What you're really looking for is sort of that bigger version type of mentor, the person who can help you understand organizational culture, the person who can maybe help introduce you to people and connect you to the important people that you should know throughout the organization. So don't worry too much about finding that person who knows how to do your job. Instead, I would look for someone who is approachable, that you think it would be open to this kind of relationship, to being your mentor, someone that you feel you could have some natural, easy rapport with. That's a big deal with the mentor. Somebody who has a good reputation, who appears to be well-liked and to have a nice network in the organization. And also, I would say somebody who appears to be happy at the organization. I think, sometimes If you get into a mentorship relationship with someone who is not too happy with the organization, they have the potential to taint your perspective. And what you really want here is to get ingrained in the organization's culture and to get well connected and to really start feeling at home there. I think that's the goal of having a mentor at this point in your career here. So hopefully you can look for a few of those factors that I mentioned and find the right person. Again, I think it's just a really wonderful sign that your organization is supporting that. For those of you who might be considering, hey, how can I start a mentorship program at my company? I recommend as I said, if you've got new people coming in, help them connect with a mentor. That's a great way to do it so that they aren't looking around trying to figure this out on their own. All right, just pausing for a quick moment to check in on chat. Looks like people have already said your hellos. That's fantastic. Okay, so if you are having problems, it sounds like the audio is ahead for a video for someone on here. If you are ever having problems with Webinar Jam, please just try reconnecting. I totally understand there are some technological frustrations with this platform. Next year in 2018, probably at the end of 2017, I will be getting a new platform. We're going to GoToWebinar, which is like the easiest, most solid platform there is. And so I will be doing that, but I'm going to wait until my contract with Webinar Jam is up, and that happens in November. So thank you for putting up with technological issues as they happen. And I appreciate when you guys are able to help each other in chat and troubleshoot with one another in chat. That's fantastic. All right, I'm going to go on to our next question here. The second question says, is it worthwhile to apply for a job that's been posted for a long time, like a month or two? So job applications online, when you see a job posting on Monster or Indeed or Career Builder or even LinkedIn, they will usually show you how long that posting has been up for. And yes, if a posting has been up for a long time, it can, give you pause. The research tells us that if you can apply within the first 3 days, your chances are much higher. So that's, a sign that we should all in job search mode be really vigilant about watching job boards. And when something comes up that's a fit for our qualifications that we're interested in, we do want to jump on it really quickly because it does improve our chances. However, if the posting is still up, it's still live, and you're able to view it, it's an indication that the company has not made a hire yet. So there's nothing to be lost by applying at this point, even if the posting's been up for a while. The only thing you'll lose is time. And I recognize that online job applications are time consuming. So, take that into account when you're weighing whether or not you should go ahead and apply after it's been up for a while. I will also just say here, because I feel like it's a requirement, that online job postings are not the best tool for finding a new job. The statistics of it are really horrible. The research tells us that we should expect about a 4% response rate, which means for every 100 online applications you complete, expect about 4 interviews. So that's horrific, and that's a huge time suck. You can increase your rate of response by having a really stellar resume. And we've talked in the past on past training webinars and Q&A sessions about how to improve your resume and improve the chances of actually increasing that response rate. But, 4% is kind of where we're starting. You might be able to boost that up to 10, 15%, but it's still a lot of time that you invest in online applications for fairly sparse return. So I just want to put it out there that online applications are not something to just completely throw out. You don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, But you also want to be focusing a lot of your attention on networking and trying to get referrals and trying to get introductions, looking at your LinkedIn contacts, seeing who knows who and organizations you might be interested in, and having conversations. That has been proven to be 14 times more efficient and effective than online job boards. So give that a try as well as applying to positions online. Okay, next question here. Thanks to everybody in the chat who's being really helpful to one another. I appreciate that. All right, number 3 says, what are the biggest communication mistakes that you see professionals make? I loved this question so much. I actually think I'm going to write maybe a blog series on this because I started brainstorming the communication mistakes that I typically see, and I realized there's quite a few. So I'll share with you really what I identified as being the 5 most common, or the 5 that I think can be the most detrimental. So the first one is not preparing what you want to say in your communication, what you want to get across in your communication. Most of you realize by now that I ask you to submit your questions to our Q&A session early ahead of time so I can prepare, so I can consolidate my thoughts and make sure that I am giving you valuable information and I'm not wasting your time. So the same thing applies in the workplace. As much as possible with your communication, you want to prepare ahead of time. You want to know what your 3 key points are, or your big 5 things that you're trying to get across. You want to be clear about that before you engage in an important conversation, before you send an email, before you write a report. It's that kind of proactive thinking. So you're not in a reactive communication mode where you're just kind of responding to what's happening and you're not actually thinking about, okay, what am I trying to get across? What's the message that I need to give to this person? So preparation is such a huge piece that people tend to forget. The second point that I had for communication mistakes is irrelevant tangents. I think that some personality types are more inclined to this, but in the workplace, we have a lot of different personality types. And generally in the workplace, people are pretty focused on results and getting the thing that's in front of them done. So when we are bombarding them with communication that's going in a lot of different directions, it can be very frustrating. And people want to kind of rein you in at that point, and it starts to diminish your professional reputation. So stay on topic as much as possible, particularly in meetings. It's become a huge cliche these days that meetings are filled with distractions and filled with irrelevant conversation. So don't contribute to that. You don't want to be that person who is bringing up something that's totally off topic in a meeting and you're pulling the whole group away from their primary focus. The third communication mistake that I typically see is being overly casual. I think that text messaging and social media has just gotten us all in some negative habits with how casual and familiar we are with people when we are interacting both in person and then also in email and in writing in the workplace. So just pause and make sure that you're putting on your professional cap when you're interacting with people. And that means, some of the basics, the basics I've found are being ignored these days. Things like greetings in an email. Things like saying thank you at the end of an email, or when you're reaching out to make a request, first introducing yourself in email if you don't already know the person. So it's little common courtesies like that I think tend to get pushed to the side because people are so used to the casual, informal, really fast back and forth of other modes of communication that we use socially. So just, remember the professionalism side of it in the workplace. Number 4, the fourth communication mistake that I noted here was over-reliance on email. I'm sure that some of you can relate to this, but I've seen it in every single workplace I've ever been in where people are sitting right next to each other and they email instead of rolling their chair back to have a conversation, or they instant message. So that is something that I think is, again, it's just like over reliance on technology, and we're missing out on some really important elements of communication, because when you're communicating through technology, you're going solely based on words. Whereas in person, we also have body language, we have facial expressions, we have gestures and different things that can help us get our point across to others and help others understand the point we're trying to make. And then finally, my fifth common communication mistake is not asking for what you want. I have been reading so much lately about how people want a promotion or people want a raise and they don't ask for it. Only a small portion of people who want advancement in their careers actually verbalize that and make specific requests. And of that small portion, a large portion of them get at least some piece of what they want simply by asking. So I know it's really intimidating sometimes, and it's a little scary to sit down and make a direct request, whether you're asking for a raise or promotion or just some new responsibilities, whatever it is. But you've got to get comfortable being assertive and really verbalizing what you want, because the worst situation is when I'm coaching someone and they've been in the career for 15 years and they say, I haven't gotten a raise in 13 years. And I say, well, have you asked for one? And no, they haven't. So you end up in this cycle where you're feeling trapped, but partly you're trapped because of your own inability to get out there and say what you need to say and ask for what you want. So those are my communication mistakes. It was a really great question. And like I said, I think I'm going to do a whole blog series on this. So keep your eye out for that on Eat Your Career. Okay. I have two more questions that have been submitted online. I'm going to pause really quickly because I'm not seeing the chat menu going crazy or anything, which always gives me pause. I just want to make sure you can all still hear me and see me. And I'm checking to see if we do have any questions that are currently in there. So remember, if you type a question into the chat menu, please mark it as a question. That way it shows up and it's got a little red question mark on there, so it catches my attention. Good. Okay. People can still hear me and see me. So that's fantastic. I always just get so nervous with this technology. I can't wait for next year and we'll all just have more peace of mind about it. Okay. Two more questions here and then I'll jump over to chat and answer any questions there. This next one says, how do you recover when you've had an emotional outburst at work? Okay. Who can relate to that? That's a good question to get chat kind of going today. Have you ever had an emotional outburst at work? I'm going to raise my hand for that. I definitely have. I've experienced it. I've seen it. I've witnessed it in others. And I've learned a lot about managing emotions in the workplace. I've learned how important it is. And I've also learned some strategies for how to prevent it and also how to recover from it. So I'm seeing people saying yes, that you have. I appreciate the honesty because I know it's hard sometimes to admit that. But most of us have, because we're human. Most of us have at some point become really invested emotionally in our work. And then when something happens that is not what we had expected or not what we wanted to have happen, emotional outbursts take place. I do have an article on the blog today at Eat Your Career called, Are You Overly Emotionally Invested in Work? And it's a good one to read about if this is something that's a pattern for you. It's worthwhile just kind of reading through that blog post and evaluating your current level of investment, because I do believe that being emotionally invested in work is a fantastic thing. It is something that we all need to feel fulfilled and feel purposeful. But it can go overboard and you can become too emotionally invested in work. And that's when emotional hijacking tends to happen, when we're so hijacked by our emotions that our logical brains just turn off. So let's talk about the question at hand, though. How do you recover when an emotional outburst has occurred? So I'd love for you guys in chat to share your recommendations and what you've done, since I know several of you have experienced this yourself. So what have you done to recover? I'll share my experiences and what I recommend. The first thing is that you've got to acknowledge it. You can't let it just be the elephant in the room that no one's talking about. The first thing to do is just to make sure that you are apologizing for any inappropriate behavior or anything unprofessional that you said or did. You're apologizing to the appropriate people, and take ownership for your behavior. So try not to do one of those, I'm sorry, but here's all the reasons why it happened. That is just kind of shoving blame away from yourself. So instead, just take ownership and full responsibility, acknowledge what happened. Also, make sure that you are articulating the fact that you are using some new strategies to make sure that that doesn't happen again. That's a big thing, especially that superiors, your boss, your manager wants to know, is that you have a plan in place for preventing that from happening again. And then you got to consistently follow through on that plan so that it doesn't happen again. I think that the biggest thing that I've learned is that you have to get past it quickly. Don't let it completely damage your self-esteem, throw you into self-doubt. Don't let it, just mar you down with this embarrassment factor. And recognize that, yes, there's some consequences to emotional outbursts. People may have some slightly shifted view of you. Your reputation can get damaged a little bit by it, and it takes some time to repair that. And the only way to repair it is through a consistent new behavior. So acting differently in the future when emotional situations arise. That's how you fix the situation. It's not easy and it's not fast, but we have to accept the fact that people see emotional outbursts and they make some judgments about that. We can't change their judgments about the past. All we can do is change our behavior moving forward. So I hope that that is helpful for the person who asked that question and others. Okay, this is the last question that was submitted through the online system, and then we'll get over to the chat menu. Okay, so this question says, as a result of recent layoffs, our 4-person admin team was reduced to 2, but 1 new person was hired as a replacement. Now a 3-person team, our workload has increased, but we can't maintain this level long term. We've asked for help, even bringing back one of the admins that was laid off, but to no avail. What advice can you give to avoid burnout, especially when things are very tight and the survivors have not been given much more support? Great question. So this question, probably a lot of people can relate to this. It started off as a 4-person team. It then became a 2-person team. They added back 1 person, so now they've got 3 people. The workload is huge and it's unsustainable for a long period of time. So they're working with a smaller team. They've got a huge workload. How do they handle it? So I do have several suggestions here. I made some notes of them, and I want to make sure that I provide them all because it's a challenging situation that this person's in. So the first thing I would recommend is to make sure that the 3 people who are on staff now, those 3 admins on the team, make sure that all 3 of you are in alignment. So it's very important that the 3 of you are getting together on a regular basis and making sure that you're communicating well with one another. You don't want to be accidentally duplicating efforts, especially because you've got this new person. I think one of the admins that is in now is a new person. You've got to have good communication between the 3 of you. So you're not stepping on each other's toes. You don't want to be duplicating work accidentally. You also want to know that the three of you have one another's back, and that you're there to help support one another, and that as a team, you guys are committed to trying to make this work. All three of you are probably feeling this total overwhelm, but together is the only way you're going to get through it. So I would really strongly recommend, if you haven't yet, establish regular check-in meetings as a team, maybe once a week, to sit down and really have some strong, good communication about what's happening and where each of you is at right now. The second thing is that you need to be perhaps a little more assertive with setting expectations, because the team now is smaller. So the team can't deliver at the same rate that you were able to deliver in the past when you had 4 people. So now you have to make some adjustments with expectations. It might mean that you have to push back some deadlines for things, or that your expected turn times are going to be a little bit extended. So you've got to have those tough conversations to establish some new reasonable expectations. I did a whole webinar on renegotiating deadlines. I think that was part of the title, or setting limits, managing expectations. It is in the career resource library. It's a whole hour-long session. So I would strongly recommend, if you didn't attend that training, to go ahead and make sure that you do that, so you can learn some strategies for setting expectations. The next thing I would recommend is to make sure that you are incredibly organized. Whenever you have an intense workload, organization becomes even more important. You've got a lot of things coming at you. And what that means, if you're like most people, for me, when I am feeling crazy and I'm bombarded with 1,000 things that I need to do, the last thing I want to do is time management and planning and organization, because it feels like, what a waste. I should be spending my time doing the work rather than organizing the work. But don't fall into that trap. I've fallen into it. I'm sure most of you have experienced that. It is a hugely counterproductive thing to do. What is far more effective is to spend a little bit of time managing and organizing what you're working on, so that things don't fall through the cracks. Don't let yourself get so distracted by everything that needs to get done that you put your good practices of time management and organization on the back burner. Those things are so important, and they're even more important now. The last one is that self-care is so important in these types of situations where you have a small team, huge workload, things are in transition, and it's kind of crazy. You've got to get really committed to your own self-care routines. For me, that's things like massages. I love a massage on the weekend. That's just like my little reward for a hard week of work. It's things like making sure that when I leave work at work. I don't take it home with me emotionally or physically. That can be hard when you're feeling overwhelmed with your workload. But remember, most of us are not in situations where everything's going to catch on fire if we don't work till 10 o'clock at night from home. We have to set those appropriate boundaries for ourselves so that we can remain healthy. If you can't remain healthy through all of this, you're going to be of no good to anyone. So it's very important to practice your self-care routines. Remembering to eat lunch, remembering to exercise regularly. It's kind of the basics that you have to pay attention to right now. All in all, in any situation where the number of people doing the work has shrunk and the amount of work has either stayed the same or grown, there's time to have a conversation. It's worthwhile for this admin team to advocate for either, like they were talking about, the person in the question mentioned asking to bring in another admin. That's something that's worth advocating for and continuing to advocate for. You have to be persistent sometimes in those types of requests. It's also worthwhile advocating as a group for some of those revised expectations. Perhaps there are some things that are landing in your group's territory that could be passed along to another team to handle, that maybe that's not the best use of your time. Maybe that's not something you guys need to be prioritizing. So open up those conversations. Communication is really key with your leadership to see if there's something that can be done for the future, because like you said, this is not sustainable. You can do everything in your power to manage it right now, but long term, this is not sustainable for the team. So you need to be having those conversations about how is this going to get resolved ultimately. Take your solutions to leadership and offer different ones. If they don't like one solution that you propose, offer some new ones. Get creative to try to find a way to manage this back to a place where it's sustainable for all of you. I really appreciate the question. It was a great one, and I hope that you found those strategies useful. Okay, so those are my questions that were submitted. So I am going to pause for a minute. I'm going to look over at the chat menu and see what questions we have. Thank you to the people who marked your questions in red. Those jump out at me. So those are going to be the first ones I address. All right. Megan says, regarding communication mistakes, what if your boss is completely unresponsive? How long and how hard to push? Good question, Megan. A lot of times on these calls, I assume that people are in administrative positions because I have a very large audience of assistants and administrative professionals. So I'm going to make that assumption here. I don't know for sure if Megan is an assistant, but if you are working to support someone and the person that you're supporting, your boss, is unresponsive to your requests or the things that you say that you need, how long and how hard to push it depends on the situation and it depends on the person. I will tell you that my overriding general rule of thumb is be pleasantly persistent. Pleasantly persistent is a fine line. There's a point when persistence does become aggressive. You don't want to reach that, but you don't want to not persist enough. We have to advocate, like I was saying in that last question, advocate. And that means coming back, reopening conversations sometimes, bringing in new evidence, bringing in new ideas. If you're, in the support position and you have a boss who's not responding to your needs, I would sit down at some point outside of the specific situation that's happening and address the pattern and say, what can I do to make sure that these types of things don't slip through the cracks because they seem to be deprioritized on your end? Are these things that you would like me pushing harder on? Opening up communication is always a fantastic solution to these types of problems, particularly for assistants, because there is so much that you need feedback on from the executive that you're supporting. You need to know what they're expecting from you. What do they want? Do they want you to be, knocking on their door every 5 minutes? I've had executives who want that. Or maybe they say, you know what, this really isn't such a priority. Remind me of it a few times and then we'll set it aside. So open up the conversation is always a good idea. Okay, I'm back over looking at chat. If you see my eyes fluttering, that's what I'm doing here. I'm just kind of glancing through some of the comments. So Karen says, I haven't had a strong outburst at work, but when my emotions have gotten the best of me, I own it and then apologize. That's it. Own it and apologize. That's what we have to do. And congratulations, Karen, that you haven't had a strong emotional outburst. Emotions getting the best of us. Like I said, we are all human. I think it happens to every single one of us. And that's why I try to be gentle on others when I see it, because I know it has happened to me in the past. And I try to be now a lot more thoughtful. I pause. It's such a simple tool. But when my emotions are starting to, play havoc with me, and we all know when we're starting to feel a certain emotion creeping up that's an unhelpful one. And when I feel that, I've learned how to pause and really think about, okay, is this useful? Is this something that I actually need to address? Or is this something that I just need to go take a walk and let it go? Or is this something that, later tonight, I'll talk to my boyfriend about it and I'll be good? We have to make those evaluations, but thinking through emotions is a really useful tool in the workplace. Let's see here. I'm going to look at this next question from Julie, who says, if you've been asked to get a mentor and it was suggested by someone in your group that the boss's wife would be the best mentor for you, is that a conflict of interest? In this instance, she may be the best mentor, but I feel funny about asking her since she's my boss's wife. Julie, I think your comment that you feel funny is indication enough that it's probably not what you need. Always respect your feelings about that sort of thing, especially with something like mentorship, because it's rarely like a part of your job description, right? It's an added bonus. It's something great that you get to do for your career. It's a great way for you to demonstrate your commitment to the organization, to your career, all that good stuff. But it's bonus. You should get to choose the right mentor for you and for your needs. And if you're already feeling funny about it, I would maybe just, see what some of your other options are. You said though that, she might be the best mentor. So perhaps maybe just kind of making some notes about what would make this person a good mentor. What are some of the drawbacks? And at the end of it, if you decide that it really is something you're not comfortable with, I think using the excuse that, hey, this is something I just feel is a little bit of a conflict of interest, I would say that for sure. And, the more that I'm kind of like mulling this in my mind, I'm thinking I wouldn't want to do that either. I would want to feel very free to speak to my mentor about what's happening with my workplace relationships, including my relationship with my boss, in a way that I don't have any sort of like tainted, worries about. And if you're talking to your boss's wife, you're going to have some concerns about being 100% honest and maybe expressing some challenges that you need some help with. So I understand your hesitation there, Julie. I agree with it. And you have every reason in the world to look for a different mentor, I think. Okay, next question says, how can you self-care when you work from home? Schedule a time block on your calendar? Jan, really good question. I'm curious to know how many other people work from home. If you do work from home, I'd love it if you'd put it in your chat menu. If maybe you do like telecommuting one day a week, I'm just kind of interested to know that. Self-care at home is so funny. A lot of people who don't work from home think it should be so easy. You're in your pajamas all day, right? And it's not. I personally get out of home. As you guys can see, I'm in an office space. I prefer to be off-site, be out of my home, because I like to have that disconnect when I go home. Even though I can't disconnect like 100% all the time, I still like for the physical space to be there. If you don't have that physical space in your home, I recommend, make a physical space where work happens, where home activities do not happen. That's like primary number one rule for me. I love time blocking. Yes. Getting away from your desk. It's the same rules apply as in the workplace. If you're working from home, that's your home office, you still get a lunch. You still can leave the house. You can take a walk. You can go down to the gym and work out for a bit, whatever it is that works well for you. You are not tied to your workspace. But, I realize that it can feel that way when you're in the evenings, you're at home and your desk is right there and you could be working. You've got to make that real schedule for yourself and respect that schedule, and make sure that you're not working 24/7, because it's so easy to happen when you're working from home. If you have a specific other challenge with that, Jan, self-care at home, let me know what other specific challenge you have, and I can brainstorm them with you, because I'm very familiar with your challenge for sure. All right, next question says, this is Karen. Karen says, I sent the admin layoff question, so thanks for your response. What is the line between getting assertive and saying you physically cannot do a task because your workload is too much, and being a subordinate and just doing the task, especially if it's your supervisor who's asking. Yeah. So there is a line, right? You want to be assertive and set new reasonable expectations that would be more reasonable for you to manage. If that is not responded to, if your boss or whoever it is that's making this request of you is not able to work with you and to compromise with you, so it's a workable workload for you, that is an indication, yes, at some point, sometimes we just have to do our best. We just have to make it work. And sometimes that means, okay, you've got to stay late, or you've got to, pull in all your resources, have these really intense days and deadlines that you're trying to meet. Sometimes we just have to make that work to the best of our ability. But if no one is able to listen to the fact that this is unsustainable, I can do this for a period of time, but it is unsustainable. If no one's willing to listen or compromise or work with that, at that point, that's when I personally, in my personal experience, I've said it's time for me to move on to a different position, because I am not willing to put myself and my health at risk because you can't work with me and make some appropriate compromises. That is the workplace has to be able to, accommodate what's a reasonable workload. I have at times worked with people and myself also, worked directly with an executive to help them understand what that workload looks like, what those things are, so they can help with the prioritization. Sometimes that can be useful because sometimes people don't understand how to be prioritizing. They think everything's an number one priority, and it's really not. So, open up and have those conversations. At the end of the day, you've got to have some relationships in the workplace that people are able to listen and hear what you need. And if they can't, that's when I look for different relationships. So I would be assertive. I would have those conversations. I would be very clear about what is on your plate. And so everyone can understand this. There's no gray area here. Nothing's in the shadows. You're being clear and work with them to the best of your ability. But they have to compromise a little bit too, because the team is smaller. There are reasonable human limitations that we all have to respect. I hope that's helpful, Karen. I know you're in a tough spot. Lisa asks, what if you've been asked by another executive to coach and mentor their assistant, but the assistant isn't open to feedback? Conversations end up being frustrating for both of us. Coaching and mentoring has to be two-way. Both people have to want to be involved in the conversation and in the relationship. It's one of the reasons why, I do career coaching. I do not sell people on career coaching. If you want career coaching, you guys know I'm a career coach. You can come to me anytime and I'd love to work with you, but I'm not going to sell it. I'm not going to force it to anybody, because if I have to drag you into coaching, I have to drag you through coaching, and you're not going to get anything out of it. It has to be wanted. People have to desire that information and that advice and that guidance. Otherwise, like you said, Lisa, it becomes frustrating for both of you. If you've been specifically asked by your executive to be this person's coach and mentor, I would, depending on how many conversations you've had with this person, at some point it's worthwhile saying, I don't think this is a fruitful relationship. But I would talk to that assistant first, and I would say, what do you think? Is this something that you want? Is this something that you find useful? If you don't want it, and if you don't find it useful, let's not waste our time. That's perfectly okay too. And that person then has to deal with the consequences on their end. You've done your best, but I'm a firm believer. You cannot force people into this stuff. And I respect your executive for wanting you to do this. It's a wonderful goal and something that was a good option, a good opportunity for the other assistant. But if she didn't want it, you've done your best. You can't force that issue. All right. Good. There's lots of good questions today. Thanks everybody for chiming in. Next question says, what are suggestions in order to build more rapport and trust with your boss when he seems to be an introvert and doesn't really communicate well? You know what? I think that there are different personality types and there are different communication styles, and we have to be respectful of those different communication styles. So building rapport with someone who is an introvert and they're really not wanting to have the banter and the chit chat about what your kids do this weekend. Oh, did you watch the game last night? If they don't want that, that's not how they, build rapport with people. So building trust most of the time with people like that, it's mainly about your competence. It's about your ability to follow through and deliver on your promises. It's more about the results that you're able to deliver for your boss, more than the rapport and the conversation that you're having. So I would maybe consider adjusting your expectations a little bit. Because rapport, we all think it's so important, but it's not important for every personality type. So if that's just not your boss's style, I would maybe do a little exploration around personality types and see if you can identify what your boss is so you can feel a little more comfortable with their world. I always recommend a book called The Platinum Rule by Tony Alessandra. The Platinum Rule. It's one of my favorites. Talks about 4 different personality styles. Really an easy read. I have read it many times, and just from what you said here, I kind of immediately start to identify your boss as one particular style. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's more details about your boss that I'm not familiar with. But maybe reading that book would help you gain some more understanding of what this person's idea of rapport really looks like and what this person actually needs for building trust. I hope that's helpful. All right, Barbara says, I'm intrigued with the idea of telecommuting, but not sure where to start. Any suggestions, words of wisdom, or caution? Yeah, I think telecommuting is what I like best about it, particularly when I was working in traditional employment. You guys know now I'm self-employed, so I can telecommute all the time. But in traditional employment, what I loved about it was like one day a week being able to work from home felt very, it felt really nice. It was like a little gift in the middle of the week. I tried to do Wednesdays working from home. So it was a lot more pleasant to me when I only did it once a week. So I always recommend start off with, start small. If you're addressing it and you're kind of pitching the idea to your leaders, make sure that you've got a plan for how you see it working, how you see it looking, all of the research. I mean, there's a ton out there online that shows that productivity increases when you work from home, that people are not as distracted with interruptions, kind of the constant hubbub that happens in the workplace. So your ability to produce that deeper concentrated work increases hugely. So there's good supporting evidence that you can cite as you're trying to convince people that this is a good idea. But you have to be able to explain how you're going to do your role. How will you stay in contact with the people that you need to stay in contact with? Usually that's things like instant messenger. It's things like having virtual, conferences either in the morning, once a day, or doing phone conferences, whatever. Having a plan of attack for how things will get done, and providing some of that supporting evidence. That's how I was able to work it years ago when I was working in Atlanta and I had a traditional job. That's what I did, is really just kind of like discussed how I would do my job. Here's some of the evidence. One day a week was all I really felt would be useful or good for me mentally. And they went for it. It worked really well. The process that I always recommend is always suggest a pilot, like, hey, let's pilot this. Let's try it for 30 days, see how it works. If you don't like it, if I don't like it, let's just go back to the way things were. But take the plan so that you're very clear about how you would manage your time and how you would manage your workload from home. Give it a try, Barbara, and let me know how it works. I'd love to hear. Okay, so it looks like that's the last of the questions that are specifically marked as questions in chat. So I'm going to go through and just see if there's any others that aren't marked as questions, but that I should be addressing. I'm just going to read a couple of comments as I see them. But Julie says, yes, massages. I actually coordinate 15-minute massages for our office. Julie, that's awesome. I have a therapist that comes in twice a month, and we pay $12 for 15 minutes of heavenly, detoxing, stress-relieving massages. So nice to have. Wow, what a luxury to have someone come into your office to do 15-minute chair massages. Oh, that's just amazing. And I personally think they are incredibly therapeutic. It's one thing that I consider to be a luxury that I am unwilling to go without in my life. It is so important for my self-care. Let's see here. What else do we have in chat? Tammy asks, do you have some career field suggestions for former admins other than retail, but not going back to $12 an hour pay? Yeah, I mean, the administrative field is such a, I mean, it's so broad, and there's so many different categories of work that you perform as an admin. There's a lot of different directions that you could go. And there is work that is kind of administrative in nature that's not specifically an admin title. So being a coordinator, depending on what field you find most interesting, for me, I love training. I love professional development. Being an admin in a training department, a training coordinator, would be a great fit for me administratively. There's marketing coordinators. There's, people that are in the human resources department. You don't have to have expertise or education in a specific area of the business to work in that area of the business and be surrounded by it and learn more about it. So I like those types of roles. It's still administrative in nature. I'm not sure, Tammy, why you're a former admin and why you're not wanting to do admin work now. But if you're open to it, that's one way to just kind of like change your role a bit. You're just getting in a different environment somewhere. There's also, different things that the admins do that are entire careers unto themselves. Event planning, travel management, there's a variety of different things. Project management, those things sometimes are going to require more education though. So you've got a lot of transferable skills. And if you're trying to stay away from the $12 an hour retail world, you've got to be looking, in the corporate environment. And those skills are needed in all sorts of, operations roles, coordinator roles, you name it. But again, I'm not sure why you're saying former admin. I'm not sure why you're trying to get away from admin. So hopefully my suggestions help. But I would still be looking in the corporate world. Your skills are needed. So it looks like we have a couple of people who do work from home. Linda works from home 1 day a week. That's like my ideal. As I said, I love that. So Julie says, from the Muse emails I get, this was a link provided to be able to find a niche of interest in something new as a role when you don't know what to do next. Thank you so much for dropping that in. It looks like it's from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And so they have, lists of different fields, different career options and occupations. You can find lots of lists and resources like that online. And if you're open to brainstorming other positions and fields and perhaps some new education, completely changing your career field, there's so many tools available there online. You can start getting creative. Administrative skills are kind of the basis for most roles. You know, you've got some good transferable skills that you can weave and mold into a variety of different fields. Thanks for sharing the link, Julie. Okay, I don't see any other questions in the chat menu. So I will just pause for 1 minute, let you guys know I'm going to be at the Administrative Professionals Conference, APC, in Las Vegas. I leave on Friday of this week. So I'm sure, you know, there might be some of you who are going to be there as well. Please, 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 if you see me, please like run up to me and say, Chrissy, I'm on your webinars. I'm, you know, part of the Eat Your Career community. Let me know. Say hello. I would just love to see you there. I will be there for a full week, pretty much doing training on site for APC. So we're going to have our next webinar in 2 weeks, and that's going to be on the topic of teamwork. So please make sure that you can join for that. We will have a revised schedule for these video Q&A, Ask the Career Coach sessions coming up in the near future. Like I said, we're going to have a new platform. We'll be on GoToWebinar. So there might be a couple, like a month or maybe even 2 months that we're going to take off while I get things all situated with the new platform. But I want to assure you that new platform is going to be really worth it, because GoToWebinar is just super solid, and we don't have to like pause every few minutes and ask if technology is working okay and stuff like that. On GoToWebinar, it works and it's fantastic. So I'm looking forward to that, but I just wanted to give you that heads up that during the winter, we might take a month or 2 off just to kind of get logistics settled with that. So I hope you understand. But these are like my favorite thing in the world to do. I was feeling so tired earlier today. And then as soon as I started prepping for this session, I started getting all jazzed. You guys always wake me up. You get me excited. I love just interacting with you and seeing the chat menu. It just makes me so happy. So thank you everyone for being here. I really appreciate it. Lisa, I'm bummed you're not going to be at APC this year too. I was like crying when I saw that. And so I see that Karen's asking another question here. We have a few more minutes. So I was just about to wrap up, but let's help Karen some more, you guys. Karen says, so there's a 99% chance the senior admin will leave soon. Okay, so Karen's the one who had the problem that we've been brainstorming about these, you know, it's a team of 3. They used to be a team of 4, huge workload. She says 99% chance senior admin will leave soon because the workload is too great for her. It's affecting her health. If I take the job, it will be a promotion for me, but a lot more work and stress. If I don't, they will likely hire from outside, which will mean more stress for me anyway. Thoughts? Karen, you gotta do some evaluation here. So the option is take a promotion, which is great for you, but it's a ton more stress, and this is a really difficult situation anyway. Would the promotion give you any more authority to better manage the situation? Would you have more voice with that promotion to better manage this situation? It's a question to ask. On the other hand, if they bring in someone from outside, you're saying that would be just as stressful. Maybe not. Maybe someone from the outside could come in and they would have a great ability to take on as much as this senior admin who's leaving was handling, maybe even more. You never know. You know, keep your mind open to the fact that a new person coming in could be a really great thing. You just don't know. I'm hesitant to say go for the promotion because you're already in a tough spot and you're already feeling like it's a real struggle right now. But if you're going to stay anyway, if taking that promotion could perhaps yield you some benefit to improve the situation, it might be worthwhile. But I would get really vocal in that conversation. Once again, if you're having conversations about potentially being promoted, I would open this up and say, here are my concerns. You know, I absolutely know that I'm capable of this position. The workload is becoming unsustainable. So how are we going to manage that? Let's talk, let's brainstorm through how we can handle that and have those conversations in your promotion conversation. You know, advancement is a wonderful thing, but not if you're setting yourself up for a bigger problem down the road. So hopefully you can kind of brainstorm some of that with your boss as you're talking through this promotion opportunity, and see how it would really work for you to have that position. You know, would that be something that you could step into fully, and would it be a helpful thing for you in your career? So let's say here's Julie. Julie's giving you the other end of the spectrum. She says, I'd be stressed either way, mostly kicking myself for not doing it. Don't do the should have, could have, would have, second guessing yourself. Go for it, Karen. So that's Julie's perspective. And typically I say go for it when if it were just like a confidence thing that was holding you back, I'd be like, go for it. You can do it. You've got it. But there's some real things here that you have to make sure that this situation is going to be something that you can wrap your arms around if you take a promotion. I am not one to say that every promotion is a good idea for your career. You've got to make sure that you're setting yourself up for a good situation. So that's my 2 cents. Julie's got a different perspective, and I love hearing that. Thanks, Julie. Angela says, ask if they'll let you try it for a week or 2. Pilot period. Always a good way to do it. Maybe wear that promotion cap for a little while, see what changes, see what kind of new influence you might have in that role to manage some things a little bit more. Maybe that would work well. Thanks, Angela. Okay. Everybody, thank you so much. Karen, I feel like hopefully you got some benefit out of this because we really, brainstormed through your situation quite a bit. Keep us informed. I'm sure I speak for everyone when I say that we all want to know how this turns out and where you go from here. We're invested now. Thank you, everyone, for being here once again. Now I'm really wrapping up. We're at the top of the hour. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you in a couple of weeks. If you're at APC, say hello. See you soon. Bye.